afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of the Mashreq Sustainability Dialogues, a webinar and podcast series where we pursue some answers to the pathway to net zero for all of us collectively as individuals, as companies, and as economies, societies. How do we put together the building blocks of sustainability that ultimately creates an outcome of net zero and tackle the carbon challenge? Today, we are joined by a number of distinguished speakers to tackle a specific question on the power of collaboration. How should different sectors work collectively towards sustainability? And we're blessed today to have a good representation from industry, from technology, from academia, and of course, from our host, Mashreq. And we're going to start off by giving our host, Shakil Haider, Chief of Staff, Corporate and Investment Banking Group at Mashreq, the opportunity to set the scene, to set the stage for us as we tackle this question of collaboration. Shakil, please, your opening thoughts.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for all the participants who have joined into the webinar. And thank you for the esteemed speakers who have taken the time out to speak about this very important topic. So when I read the topic on collaboration, the first thing that came to my mind was the most quoted definition of sustainability. And this was quoted back in 1987 until date. It is still the most quoted definition. It was quoted in United Nations General Assembly, and also published in a report called Our Common Future. And the definition is that the sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising on the ability of our future generation to meet their own needs. Now, when I look back, this is 36 years ago that this definition was quoted. And looking back, it seems that we have already compromised the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And a lot of work needs to be done in a collaborative way in order to reverse some of the damage that have already taken place. And the collaboration, in my view, has a number of dimensions to it, starting with the collaboration between the public and private sector to drive the capital flows to sustainable projects, where the public sector as well as the private banks have to work together along with a number of other agencies. The second is collaboration between the banks, the rating agencies, and the governments in order to standardize the ESG measurement and risk framework. And the third is to focus on collaboration between various corporate, civil sector, entrepreneurs, academia, to ensure that the synergies and efficiencies are met. And finally, and last but not the least, I think the concept of systems thinking and basically embedding ESG into the entire ecosystem is of paramount importance. And I think all of these are focus areas for the COP28, which in my view is a COP that goes beyond intentions into real action. And the four key focus areas in COP28 do include the mitigation, where there's a focus to move towards clean energy, the adaptation, where there's a focus to ensure that ESG benefits are equitably distributed even to the marginalized communities, finance, where there's a focus on directing the capital flows to sustainable projects, and operationalization of loss and damage, which again makes it more global than regional. So with these opening remarks, Sean, I'll pass it back to you. And thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting us. Let's welcome industry's voice first, which of course is in some ways the anchor of where the rubber meets the road. Philippe de Cnudde, the Chief Risk Strategy and Sustainability Officer at ACWA Power. It's always interesting in some ways to observe how companies and institutions are aggregating, if you like, the role of sustainability. And sometimes you see the chief financial officer is also the sustainability officer. Here we have the chief risk and strategy officer, now also the sustainability officer. Philippe, we welcome your opening thoughts. Of course, collaboration is the core of ACWA Power and power generation in general, operating in the region and anywhere. Your thoughts on the theme today?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me, and hi to everybody participating. Yeah, of course, I mean, the whole sustainability and whether it's, I think now it's on the climate changes, but there is also the social and the governance part. But it's basically the typical thing about it is that it impacts everybody. It's not one issue that you say, okay, we're going to look a couple of industries together. No, it's all. So collaboration is, of course, you cannot do it without it. It is impossible. Now, there's, of course, a very complex thing. We in ACWA Power, of course, are in our regions where we are, our customers and our partners in long-term assets are mostly governments. So that is something that there is a natural collaboration because the governments have their objectives. And I think governments are in this whole sustainability thing very important, because as you said, there is the COP, which is basically at a global level, but is mostly governments. Okay, now the industry is coming in a little bit more, but basically it was governments with commitments on the government level.
Well, it's a treaty at the end of the day, and governments make treaties and obviously invite companies and NGOs to participate on the sidelines.
Yes, and there, of course, there is the whole thing, because you can do it both ways. Huh? You can do these things law-based, and you can do it voluntary-based. Law-based means the government says you should do this, and voluntary-based is industry, we would like your help, can you do this and that? And that is still a little bit, some is law-based, some is voluntary-based, and the more urgent it becomes, the more it will become law-based. So I think it's important as an industry that we do voluntary-based to avoid too much law-based.
But we can't be waiting around for industry for too long. Isn't that part of the problem? That yes, we need the top-down approach, the top-down direction, yes, and destination, because industry and your peer groups have, you know, been not necessarily leading, let's say.
No. It's very clear. And I think there is something in between now that you see coming up, which is what I call the incentive-based. The United States, or of course now with their Inflation Reduction Act, the big guys would say, okay, guys, we're not going to impose you, but we're going to give you a bunch of money if you do it. And that probably will help us well. We've seen it in Germany for solar 10 years ago, so it helps. Now, of course, for the industry, we have, of course, shareholders, stakeholders. So, okay, there are a couple of things that we should take into account. And the sustainability should play also for governments, I think, in the classical triangle between sustainability, affordability, and reliability. Because you can go to renewables from today to tomorrow, but you will have an issue with affordability and with reliability. So that's why more and more we're having to look at models on transition. And therefore there is a collaboration necessary between governments and industry. And like I said, the industry should, in my opinion, be really trying to be voluntary based and be part of the game, because otherwise I think there will be a lot of law-based actions.
Well, certainly the direction from upon high is becoming clearer as the matter becomes more urgent. Let's welcome Hazem Nabih, Regional Technology Officer, Middle East and Africa for Microsoft, which of course is of itself nearly a focal point in which different sectors come together and have to work collectively. I wanted to get Hazem Nabih's opening comments on the question of different sectors working collectively towards sustainability. What does that look like to you, Hazem?
Yeah, thank you, Sean, and thank you, Shakil, for running this and inviting all of us to be here with you. Let me start by maybe reflecting that on from our long journey or our learning as Microsoft. As a company, we've embarked on our sustainability journey quite back since probably 2008 and 2012, where we've had very early goals on sustainability and on carbon and so on. But throughout the past 10 years or so, we've learned a lot of things. We've learned that really to make progress on this journey, it's an ecosystem, right? You can easily control your first party impact, right? You can easily control your first party carbon emissions in scope 1, but really to make an impact, you have to look at all of the problem together, right? Which means everything in the supply chain, which then when you start to think about that and we started to look at how we can solve that, we realize that we cannot solve it on our own. We have to enable everybody in the ecosystem to really contribute so that we can make progress. And at the core of this, we as Microsoft see that data is going to be the most critical component of that. If we can't measure it, if we can't record what we're doing to the climate, if we can't record how our journey is progressing, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to really say we're making progress or we're not making progress, or even taking corrective actions, applying laws, doing anything. And at Microsoft, we feel that our role comes in the data component of sustainability, right? How do we make sure that we're enabling every part of the ecosystem to really capture the right data points, store these data points, and then process them through different solutions without going into too much technical details on the technology side of it. But at the core of it, we believe that technology has a huge role to play in bringing the data to everybody so that they can take the right.
What about when it comes to the sharing of that data? I didn't hear that word in your summary there. And that'd be the idea. And when we're talking about multi-sectoral solutions here, we not only have to have each sector do their part in gathering and aggregating their own data, but then for solutions to emerge, that cross-sectoral sharing of data, how do we cross that Rubik's Cube? How big a challenge is that?
It's a massive challenge, honestly, and it really requires the transparency. The problem is not the technology to share the data. Sharing the data technologically is the easy part. It's the transparency. It goes back to the policies and the legislations Philip was alluding to having policies and legislations that make it mandatory to have this data transparency across the ecosystem. Once that data transparency is available and is shared, it could be moved across the different components of the ecosystem. One of the examples maybe I'd like to mention very briefly, please, what we're trying to do in Microsoft with an offering that we're putting to market, which is called Environmental Credit Service. And what Environmental Credit Service strives to do is to really create an ecosystem for the different players to come together, right? So as we look at carbon and we're looking at offsets and so on, there's a huge market emerging now for carbon offsets, carbon credits, and the trading of that. And for every organization, it's going to be very important to make sure that this is being managed across the ecosystem. So as Microsoft, we're putting out an environmental credit service as an offering that integrates with the technology and with the different data points, but it allows everybody to bring in. So if you're basically providing carbon credits, let's say through science-based or environment-based carbon credits, like through planting trees or through technology that eliminates carbon, then you're offsetting these carbons in a marketplace. That marketplace also has verifiers that verify that these credits are real. So it has the issuers that issue the credits, it has the verifiers, so the verifying organizations, the global ones that verify that these are real credits, are not just a bunch of non-real credits and this type of fraud that's been happening in this type of area recently. So you have the issuers, you have verifiers, and then you have the purchasers, and all of this comes in an ecosystem that exchanges this data seamlessly across. So we feel that at Microsoft, we have a responsibility to provide the technology that enables the ecosystem to collaborate and work together.
Well, it's interesting. Fahad Khan, Deputy Department Chair of Computer Vision Sustainability Champion at Mohamed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. Of course, another similar focal place, isn't it? The university, the area of academia, you sit in the middle of multiple stakeholders like a bank, like Microsoft. You are in a way a conduit. I welcome your opening thoughts, Fahad, and in particular, are you seeing, or how would you see cross-sectoral collaboration in the Middle East? Is it a unique form? Is there something that you are seeing from your vantage point that gives an outlook for that landscape?
Thank you very much for the invitation. First, I would like to first agree with what Hazem and Philip mentioned about having a strong need for cross-sectional collaboration, as well as accessibility. Then, as you mentioned,
Do you
I came
see
from
that as your
academia.
role? Is that something where you have I mean, you're an AI university driven by the leadership in Abu Dhabi. Is that a critical part of your raison d'etre?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, I would like to mention here the importance of academia, as you mentioned. I mean, I strongly believe a collaboration and partnership between academia and industry, as well as public and private sector, is actually the key to achieve the desired objectives. And Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, here we are fully committed towards conducting cutting-edge research work in order to develop novel AI solutions that can be
Applied
pivotal
or
for
basic? Are you going to be on the edge where it's going to have application, or is it going to be deep in the academic space?
Both deeper in academic space, because we need to have come up with the novel solutions, for instance, in drug design and discovery, in climate change, as well as having a mechanism to promote this research and transfer it to the industry and to the end users. This is both equally important in order to achieve these goals for us. So, in summary, to put it simply, I believe artificial intelligence can enable our future systems to be more productive for the economy and for the nature. And for this to have to achieve that, we actually need a very strong collaboration across different sectors, as Hazem mentioned, for instance, in terms of accessibility of data, but also preserving the privacy of the data and ensuring that it's actually safe to operate with the data.
I wanted to go back to the point that was made a little bit earlier at the start of our conversation by Shakil. Shakil, discussing the area of financial collaboration, the access to capital, and where that sort of meets in this nexus of the new challenge. I mean, a bank's key metrics in the past, and for most companies, and obviously still very much the key metrics for ACWA Power and others, is profitability. That was it. That was the sole North Star. Now we have the triple P, planet, people, and profitability. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit of how you make that adjustment from one metrics to three and the intersection of those three.
Yes, I think the most important aspect of this is established fact that over a medium to long term there is a massive positive correlation between sustainable investment and profitability. So the banks have now realized that the entire concept or the thought of short-termism will not bear fruits. And this is quite, you can see the evidence of this in a number of things, the land degradation, the floods, the physical risk that the climate change has posed, a number of investments where ESG risk was not properly measured, resulting in losses. So that's basically created awareness on the climate side. But the same goes for the social and governance side, where there was lack in the governance policies of the banks. Again, that has not yielded great results. So I think the first point to make there is that from a perspective of bankability or commercial viability, there is a clear-cut focus and move towards sustainable projects. The second point is that the entire what collaboration actually results is a collective move towards such sustainable projects. So there is less focus on profitability, immediate profitability, when you actually start sort of committing to a net zero and committing a specific amount of capital to be deployed, because then you're looking at the long-term benefits rather than a short-term profitability. So those 2 points, coupled with the fact that there are multilateral development banks, there are government subsidies, there are products which are actually very beneficial and more commercially viable than just doing clean lending on the ESG projects.
Well,
So
Philip, I'd like you to just to bring Philip in there to pick up on that, because inevitably ACWA Power has ACWA Power creates power from natural gas, it creates, but also power from renewables, and has been at the forefront of some of the groundbreaking price economic efficiencies in renewable solar power generation. I wonder if you would speak to us a little bit, Philip, about whether we're seeing unique partnerships emerge in the Middle East. What was the collaboration between government, business, civil society that allowed some of these breakthroughs to achieve some of the lowest cost solar power generation in the world from this region?
Yeah, first of all, that's for sure. We have, of course, a legacy. We are a company that has been around, so we still have some fossil fuels, but we definitely our focus right now is renewables. And we always have been, even in the past, we said, okay, one of our missions is to be a cost leader. We want to bring power and water to the societies at the most affordable price. And now mostly we are in an environment where there is bidding. So governments are putting a bid out. So anyhow, it's the lowest cost who wins. Now, the big advantage, I have to admit, which has changed since the last 10 to 5 years, is that renewable power is the cheapest power.
But how did we get there? That just didn't happen. I mean, in this region, the collaboration from government, they made very large amounts of land, for example, available at very competitive prices, let's say.
No. First of all, there's the technology. If you look at the prices of solar panels and wind turbines, it has been dropping phenomenally. So naturally, you get scale, and renewable energy is the cheapest energy. Of course, it's a different type of energy. You need a lot of land. You need certain specific permits, and that is, of course, where governments come in, and they have to facilitate all that, because you cannot do that. Especially in our regions, you cannot do that alone. And you see more and more that, like we are working a lot in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the projects are immense. If you compare that to Europe, where you have a couple of megawatts, because in Europe, of course, the space is not there. In Saudi, we do 2 gigawatts of solar at one time. And that makes also the cost advantage. If you put such big projects in scale, the price drops as well.
So in essence, you're saying there, sort of in contrary to the earlier points, that regionally, the government policymakers are on board. They are giving clear and direct destinations for companies and other stakeholders to point towards.
Oh, absolutely. I think if I'm using two examples which are very clear, which is the Emirates. If you see what we're doing in Dubai, a solar park that is not far from where I live here is immense. And then if you go to the KSA, if you look at their ambitions for the number of gigawatts of renewable power, it's unique in the world. So of course the drive there is there. There's no issue. It's not people like ACWA Power who say we will do that. It's the governments who say come and do it for us. But you have to be competitive. You have to work in partnership. Because, okay, I mean, you have to follow the rules of the country. It's not that you get a free blank check. It's still competition, but of course, it's very, very close collaboration with the authorities.
And overlaying that, of course, as we talked earlier, is Hazem, is the technology. Where does the technology intersect with that government and industry collaboration? Where have we seen those successful tech partnerships emerge?
Well, the tech partnership, that is, of course, and now it becomes an issue, not, but a talkative point.
Yeah, let's bring in Hazem on that point, Philip. Hazem, your thoughts on that?
All these technologies now come predominantly from China.
Well,
So
China and hopefully some other places as well. Hazem, please jump in.
Yeah, so on technology and on creating partnerships in Microsoft, we've been traditionally a company that does everything in partnership with the ecosystem. So when it comes to technology, really, as Microsoft, we bring in first-party technology solutions. So we do have our technology that comes in as a platform to basically enable any type of
But do you see it? Do you see it in particular sectors? I mean, we're talking cross-sector here, but is mobility making the progress? We've just had ACWA Power talking about where power has been some real breakthroughs because of land, government policy. Are there other where technology, smart cities? Where are we seeing, if you like, that cross-sectoral intersection and really moving the needle?
So, I mean, in all honesty, I think with what's happening in the region in the past 2 years and in the prelude of COP27 in Egypt last year and now going into COP28, all industries are focused on sustainability, and sustainability has gained a first seat position in almost each and every industry. Of course, there are different industries that are making progress at different speed, but and in all honesty, the collaboration and the desire from governments, again, in the region in the last 2 years has been phenomenal, with the introduction of the concept of smart cities, taking in different shapes and forms of smart cities, of course, in the region, all the way from Qatar to Saudi Arabia to the UAE. Smart city concept and the technology playing a critical role in enabling smart city is one of the critical and predominant themes we're seeing. We're also seeing a lot of energy, and the energy sector specifically in the oil and gas has been really looking towards technology to come in and help look at the current challenges, whether that is with energy on the power side or on the oil and gas side. There is a lot of technology adoption today happening to basically take steps ahead on the journey of sustainability. So I would say it's all across. It's a focus area for governments and the private sector alike. In the last 2 years, it has been phenomenal pickup in the region.
Fahad, just picking up on that and layering over it, artificial intelligence. I mean, if it wasn't the year of COP28 or bankruptcies in the US or whatever, it would be AI, ChatGPT stealing all the headlines. Where does that solution tool come into the mix, and particularly in this region when it comes to advancing sustainability?
So as Hazem also mentioned, I mean, we are also actively collaborating and making partnerships, for instance, with IBM to combat climate change and weather effects, and also for developing sustainable solutions for healthcare with the partnership with the local hospitals, for instance, in virtual healthcare or in some of the diseases where the solutions are still not easily accessible. So these are some of the examples of the partnerships where we really see AI being leveraged between in the academia and the local authorities and the business sector as well. Now you speak about one particular aspect, this ChatGPT, because it's making a lot of noise recently. So
well, it is for the first time where the sense of artificial intelligence has really come down to a retail level, it feels, and where impact can be made, but it's still unclear where that is a tool for sustainability.
So as I mentioned, for instance, I mean, there are tools. So ChatGPT is just one, I would say, component or towards making these large scale tools. There could be other components as well. There are a lot of other AI technologies, for instance, the computer vision, natural language processing, and machine learning. All of these have to come together to make these large scale solutions, or at the end, things which will making an impact. I give an example of the climate change project and initiative that we have with IBM. Here we are actually harnessing a lot of satellite and other related data to make sure that we can come up with some solutions such as heat island detection and so on, and also vegetation mapping in order to make cities more sustainable.
So in that way, you're really talking about shared goals and values. I mean, quite often we talked earlier about the idea of financial collaboration. You can't just have profitability as your only matrix, and collectively or individually, we can't just have our own self-interest. We have to see a wider good.
Absolutely, it's basically, as I mentioned, it's basically to come up with new solutions that are more productive for the overall economy and for the nature. So this is just not just one person's interest at the end. It's a collaborative, collective interest for the whole planet.
And how do you translate that into my bottom line, your bottom line? What's our common interest? How do we get that message across?
So I think, as we were mentioning, I mean, there's a lot of top-down support also, which is really helping to achieve this goal, and that
particularly
makes
in this
things
region
move faster. Yes, particularly in this region. I mean, UAE is a very unique place. I mean, there's a very strong, extremely strong support from the leadership across different sectors. So we have the world's first AI university, for instance. We have a very strong
Minister of AI.
Support. Yes, absolutely. And all these things contribute towards having a very friendly ecosystem that supports this cross-sectional collaborations to achieve this goal.
Well, let's go to sort of closing comments on where we go with this next. What are some of the next steps for high impact collective action? It is the year of action. Some of you have mentioned it through our half hour together. COP28, the UAE government in leading that, have identified it as an impact COP. I want to start with you, Philip. What are some of the next steps for high impact collective action from your perspective, from ACWA Power's perspective?
I think for us, it's important that we don't lose the speed.
Speed.
I think there has been, to supply chain channels, to the conflicts that we have seen in the world, to the geopolitical tensions, there is some kind of risk that people say, oh, we have other priorities. And I think that's for us a danger. I think people need to say, okay, we have to do this. And also in the US, you see...
It certainly feels that energy security has kind of trumped energy transition in this current cycle, and there's a bit of a grit in the wheel there.
A little bit, but I'm not pessimistic. I think in Europe, not because, okay, forcibly they have to go to something else. But I think that for me, the message, I think that the governments have to not talk, and they do as well, but the action has to be there. And we in the industry are willing to do it.
As we move through the commentary here and go to our other speakers for your closing comments, Hazem, is there the collective, the point we made there earlier, the idea that this is not an individual benefit, we have to somehow get our triple P into a collective benefit? Your thoughts on that, next steps for high impact collective action?
I think basically we have to capitalize on the whole momentum in the region, right? And to capitalize on that, I think at Microsoft, we believe that one of the biggest opportunities we have is to really create the skills and the capabilities in the whole ecosystem. There's a lot of desire, there's a lot of interest in the topic, and that's the best moment. So to basically capitalize on that. And I think every organization has a role to play in terms of skilling, whether skilling their direct employees, skilling their customers, or skilling the ecosystem around them on the topic. Because once we elevate that level of understanding and we elevate the skilling of the entire ecosystem and community we're operating in, that is what is going to allow us to advance. And so at Microsoft, we've introduced our Sustainability Business School and our Sustainability Technology School. These are very, I would say, agile and simple web-based training courses for everybody to come in, join, and learn about the sustainability challenges and learn about the technology in sustainability. And we feel this is our contribution to really advance that in capitalizing on the opportunity and the awareness.
On that point, just to note, are we on par here in the region? Are we way behind your other markets? Obviously, you operate in every market in the world. Where are we in that sort of advancement, if you like, from the point of view of competence and knowledge and skill around the ability to implement the sustainability track?
The way we see it is a little bit different, right? It's difficult to say we are behind or we're ahead, right? If you look at some of the very advanced organizations in the financial services or in the power, energy, and industry in the region, they're really advanced in what they're doing, right? So we have some, let's say, like North Star, some people that are really way ahead of the rest of the region. And then we have the bulk of the region that still needs to make faster progress. And similarly, in other parts of the world, also there are organizations that are leading and organizations that are lagging. And it really differs by industry segment, but the type of the organization and the priorities the leadership have set. So it's difficult to group it all in one. I would say we have some great showcases in the region, but we definitely need to do more and we need to do it faster.
Well, there's certainly cases where, necessity is the mother of innovation. We've seen some incredible financial innovation in parts of Africa where there isn't even a road or rail infrastructure, but because of necessity, we've leapt forward. Let's give our final word, closing comments to our host, Shakil Haider. Again, Shakil, your thoughts on closing out our session together, and also that idea of where next, how do we accelerate?
No, thanks, John. I think a few themes definitely emerged. The first one is that we need to create that sense of urgency and basically move towards a low carbon economy. And to all the participants who spoke about the importance of AI and technology, the focus is actually in a term recently emerged, which is called the twin transformation, which is the transformation that is basically being made by the technology and collaboration. So that's key. So the second point is from a banking perspective, to have ESG incorporated in your investment decisions. So that is very key to actually have a measure of ESG in terms of capital deployment. And the third point to that is to actually having standardized measurement tools to measure ESG. So currently there are 1,100 different set of tools that are used to actually measure the impact of ESG from a reporting and disclosure standpoint. That needs to be more standardized. And then the fourth point is to make sure that this is a global and a collaborative agenda should basically take precedence, because it's very important for all the different participants within the ecosystem to collaborate to drive towards these sustainable goals.
Well, I think it's certainly going to be a very interesting 6 months ahead as we march towards COP28, the COP of impact, and the momentum, as Philip mentioned, the speed is certainly, the wind is in the sails, at least in this region, towards having tangible impact. I'd like to thank our 150 people who registered to attend today's webinar, Mashreq Sustainability Dialogues, and for our tackling of the question, the power of collaboration. How should different sectors work collectively towards sustainability? It is the critical question. Together, there is clearly more impact. As the saying goes, 5 fingers doesn't make a fist. A fist is where we all work together and really dent the universe, so to speak. I'd like to thank so much our guest speakers today. Philip de Cnudde, Chief Risk Strategy and Sustainability Officer at ACWA Power. Of course, Hazem Nabih, Regional Technology Officer, Middle East and Africa at Microsoft. And Fahad Khan, Deputy Department Chair of Computer Vision Sustainability Champion. I love that. We should all be carrying that badge around with us at Mohamed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence. And of course, our host, Mashreq, Rise Every Day. I love that new slogan. Chief of Staff, Corporate and Investment Banking Group at Mashreq. Thank you for hosting us today for this important discussion. Have a good day.
Thanks.